They called her worthless meat, until a human bought her and changed everything. The alarms began like whispers, soft, uncertain, and then rose into a chorus of panic that shook the metal bones of Orbital Bazaar 9. Smoke rolled through the narrow corridors, curling around flickering neon lights. Vendors screamed, scattering from their stalls as the fire suppression system failed, one sector after another. Ray Jazan moved against the crowd. Where others ran from the fire, he walked toward it. The heat bit at his face, but he didn't slow. Old habits die hard. He'd been a firefighter once, before the wars, before the debt, before the name Sable Collective turned half the galaxy into slaves. His boots rang against the deck as he reached the burning lab level. The air shimmered like liquid glass. Transparent pods lined the walls, each filled with smoke and someone, moving inside. A faint pulse of light flickered from within one of them, steady and rhythmic like a heartbeat. He smashed the control panel with the butt of his tool wrench. The pod hissed open. Steam and chemical vapor burst out, and a figure collapsed into his arms. She was light, too light, and glowing faintly beneath scorched skin. Her eyes opened, gold and fierce despite the weakness in her limbs. "Easy," Ray said. "You're safe." Her voice was rough, melodic in a strange way. "No one is safe here, human. They're coming." He looked past her down the hallway. Shadows moved, tall, armored, efficient. "Sable hunters. Guess we'd better leave then," he muttered. He grabbed the plasma cutter from his belt and sliced through the collar locked around her neck. Sparks rained down, burning tiny holes in his sleeve. The collar hit the floor with a hiss and a click. The woman flinched as if something deep inside her snapped free. Her glow brightened, then steadied. "You shouldn't have done that," she said quietly. "Too late to return it," Ray answered, scanning for exits. "Name?" She hesitated. "Ari." "Well, Ari, you've got two choices. Follow me or burn." A plasma shot seared the wall beside them, showering them with molten metal. Decision made. She followed. They ran through a maintenance hatch into the ventilation shafts. The noise of the chase grew louder behind them. Boots, shouts, the metallic scrape of weapons. Ray led the way through twisting tunnels, ducking sparks and cables, his hands moving with practiced precision. "Who were you to them?" he asked between breaths. "Property," she said bitterly. "The collective breeds my kind for parts." He didn't answer. He'd heard of the Luminari, beings of living light, their cells capable of regenerating radiation damage. Worth fortunes on the black market. They burst out onto an exterior catwalk overlooking the lower levels of the bazaar. Below them, chaos reigned. Fire climbed the walls, licking neon signs into melted shapes. Security drones fought to contain the flames, their optics turning red as systems overheated. A gunship swept by, searchlights stabbing through the smoke. A voice barked through speakers, cold and mechanical. "Return the asset. Surrender and live." Ray grinned despite the danger. They always say that. He jumped. The fall wasn't long, but it was far enough to break a lesser man. Ray hit the roof of a market stall, rolled, and came up running. Ari landed beside him with inhuman grace, her bare feet leaving glowing footprints that faded after a second. They ducked into a narrow alley, the air thick with burning spice and ozone. Ari grabbed his arm. "You don't understand. They will chase us across systems." Ray shrugged. "Then they'll get their exercise." She studied him, confusion flickering across her luminous eyes. "Why help me? You don't even know me." He didn't slow down. "I used to pull people out of burning buildings. Guess some habits stick." They reached the edge of the bazaar's docking ring. Ray's ship, the Ember, waited in Bay 17, a patchwork freighter barely holding itself together. The ramp lowered with a groan as he keyed the access code. Blaster fire echoed down the corridor. A drone squad rounded the corner, red lenses gleaming. Ray spun, pulled a flare from his belt, and threw it high. The flash blinded the drones long enough for him to grab Ari's hand and pull her aboard. The Ember's hatch sealed just as plasma bolts scorched the outer hull. Engines roared to life. Through the viewport, the orbital bazaar burned, a spiral of orange and blue against the darkness of space. Ari stood beside him, watching silently. "You lost something there," she said softly. Ray shook his head. "Not today." The Ember turned, thrusters flaring bright. Behind them, the bazaar exploded, a chain reaction of stored fuel cells lighting up the void. Ray watched the blaze shrink to a spark. They'll be after us now. Ari's eyes glowed brighter. Then you should know what you've started, human. You didn't rescue me. No. She smiled faintly, the light in her skin pulsing like a heartbeat. You joined the war. The ember drifted through the black, engines on silent mode. Only the hum of recycled air broke the stillness. Outside, the stars stretched like a frozen sea, but Ray Jazan didn't trust the quiet. In his experience, silence was what came before the hunt. He sat in the pilot's chair, boots up on the console, cigarette glowing faintly in the dim light. The smoke curled toward the ceiling vents, lazy and harmless, unlike the man who made it. Across from him, Ari moved like a reflection of firelight. Her skin shimmered faint gold under the ship's lights, the glow faint but steady now that the collar was gone. You keep pacing, Ray said without looking up. That floor's not gonna wear itself smooth. Ari paused, hands clasped behind her back. I can feel them, she whispered. They're signatures. My kin. Somewhere close, but fading. He looked over, brow furrowed. You mean you can sense others like you? She nodded. It's a resonance. When one of us dies, the echo fades into the dark. When one of us lives, we feel it. Her voice trembled, though her eyes stayed hard. Too many echoes are dying, Ray. He didn't know what to say. He'd seen whole cities burn, but somehow this quiet grief, cut deeper. The ship's console blinked. A warning tone pulsed. Tracking beacon detected. Damn it. Ray flicked ash into a can and started typing commands. They tagged us. How? Hunter Echo Beacon. Probably attached when we left the bazaar. Smart tech. Feeds on power signatures. Hides in the static. He pulled a panel from the console, exposing tangled wires and circuits. Ari leaned over his shoulder, the scent of ozone and warm metal following her. Can you remove it? Ray grinned, sharp and tired. I can do better. He rerouted the beacon's signal into one of the ship's old trash pods. Then he programmed a delayed ignition and jettisoned it into space. Seconds later, the pod flared to life, burning bright like a meteor. Ari's eyes widened. You're using the decoy as bait. Not my first chase, Ray said, flipping switches. The hunters will think we blew up. Gives us a few hours. Ari turned toward the viewport, watching the fake explosion fade. You risk a lot for someone you just met. He gave a humorless chuckle. You sound like my old crew. They said the same thing before the fire on Titan. What happened? They didn't make it out. His tone left no room for questions. The silence returned, thicker this time, heavier. The hum of the engines filled it like a heartbeat. Ari finally spoke, her voice softer. You still carry them. Yeah, he said quietly. We all carry something. The ship jolted slightly. The NAV display flickered, showing faint blips behind them. The hunters had split formation. A small group was heading their way, slow, deliberate. They're not fooled, Ari said. They're curious. Ray leaned forward. That's fine. Curiosity kills faster than lasers. He throttled the Ember down to a crawl, letting it drift among a field of derelict satellites. Then, with a flick of his wrist, he turned off every light, every unnecessary system. Total darkness. The stars vanished. Only the faint gleam from Ari's skin gave any shape to the void. What are you doing? She whispered. Teaching ghosts to hunt ghosts. He grabbed a manual lever, a relic from pre-digital ships, and shifted power to magnetic clamps. The Ember lashed onto a dead freighter drifting in the field, camouflaged among the wreckage. Minutes passed. Then a shadow glided overhead, a sable skimmer, scanning for heat signatures. Ari held her breath. Ray didn't move. Even the engines were silent. The scanner beam swept across them, lingered, and then moved on. Only when the skimmer disappeared did Ray exhale. See? Works every time. Ari's eyes glimmered faintly. You're reckless. I'm alive. Difference is in the details. She tilted her head, studying him. You could have left me back there. Could have, he agreed. Why didn't you? Ray stared at the stars beyond the viewport, their cold beauty reflected in his eyes. Because someone once pulled me out of the fire. I didn't deserve it either. Ari didn't reply. She just stepped closer, her glow softening the shadows between them. Then maybe this time, the fire owes you back. Ray looked at her, truly looked, and for a brief second, the silence felt less empty. Then the console chimed again, an encrypted message bouncing through a dozen relays. He opened it. The text scrolled fast, but one phrase stood out. Moth ref, active. Luminari cargo confirmed. Ari's breath caught. That's where they took them. Ray smirked. Guess our quiet trip just turned into a rescue mission. The Ember's engines flared back to life, cutting through the dark like a blade. Behind them, the stars shimmered with new light, the faint glow of hunters realizing their prey had vanished. Ray tapped the throttle. Let's go steal from the devils. Ari smiled, eyes burning bright. Let's burn them instead. The Ember coasted above the blue-gray glow of a dying moon, its orbit cutting through layers of static interference. Inside the cockpit, Ray Jazan leaned forward, cigarette hanging from his lips, eyes fixed on the flickering screen. Static filled the comm feed, but buried under the noise was a pattern. Someone trying to jam their signal. They're hiding something, Ray muttered. Ari stood beside him, her reflection faint in the glass. Her golden skin pulsed softly with energy, a living beacon in the ship's dim light. Not something, she said quietly. Someone. He turned to her. You sure? She nodded. The resonance, it's weak, but it's there. A cluster of my kind, confined and silenced. It feels like cages. Ray dragged a hand down his face. So the Mothspire's not just a refinery, it's a prison. Her voice was barely a whisper. And a slaughterhouse. He didn't ask how she knew. He'd seen enough human cruelty to imagine the rest. The ship's console beeped, a low, pulsing tone. A signal burst through the interference, a distress ping, disguised as an engineering alert. Ray amplified it. The voice was synthetic, filtered through a dozen encryptions. If you can hear this, the data core is alive. Repeat, the core is alive. Ari's eyes widened. The core. What is it? Ray asked. A memory archive, she said, moving closer. Every luminari captured by Sable, they extract our light's signatures and encode them. That's how they sell us. But if the core is still intact, then every crime, every transaction, every death they tried to hide, it's all in there. Ray exhaled smoke through his nose. Then that's our proof. He tapped a few commands, pulling up the coordinates embedded in the signal. The Mothspire's moving on a slow orbit around Kepler 118c. Fully armed, heavily shielded, crewed by half a syndicate. Ari stared at the map. We can't fight them head-on. We won't, Ray said, standing up. We'll steal from them while they sleep. Hours later, the Ember drifted under a cloak of scrap metal and signal jammers, closing in on the refinery. The Mothspire loomed in the dark like a floating city, spires of black iron and red plasma, vents casting ghostly light into space. Ray adjusted the controls manually, his hands steady as stone. They'll scan for ships, not garbage. So we'll be garbage for the next 10 minutes. Your plan relies on stupidity, Ari said. Most good ones do. When the Ember latched onto the refinery's underbelly, the ship shuddered, metal groaning in protest. Now we crawl, Ray said, slipping on his rebreather and grabbing a tool bag. The maintenance tunnel smelled like rust and ozone. Ari followed silently, her faint glow dimming to almost nothing. Only her eyes glimmered gold in the dark. As they climbed through a narrow hatch, Ray saw a group of workers below, a mix of alien species, tired, silent, afraid. Slave labor. He clenched his jaw. Ari touched his arm. Later, she whispered. First the core. They reached the data vault doors, thick, reinforced with biocoded locks. Ray crouched, pulling out a device that looked like a child's toy cobbled from junk. This will open it. Ari raised an eyebrow. That's not possible. He smirked. Good thing I'm bad at impossible. He connected the device, twisted a dial, and the lock sizzled, then clicked open with a tired sigh. The vault's interior lights blinked to life, revealing rows of crystal cylinders, each one pulsing faintly with color. Ari's breath hitched. These are them. My people. She moved among the cylinders, her fingers trembling as they brushed against glowing glass. Each one holds a life they erased. Ray stepped to the console, inserting a data chip. Then let's unerase them. He began the upload. The holographic interface came alive with faces, names, locations, thousands of them. Luminari. Humans. Other species. Victims cataloged like merchandise. This is it, Ray said. Enough to burn Sable from the inside out. But then the lights flickered. A deep vibration rolled through the floor. Ari froze. They know. Ray yanked the data chip free, the console sparking as alarms blared. Red strobes flashed across the vault. We've got company. Through the door's small viewport, armored guards gathered. 8, maybe 10. Ari's glow brightened, gold bleeding into white. You run, she said. I'll cover. Ray grabbed her wrist. No. You want freedom? Then we live to spread it. He tossed a smoke capsule, filling the room with a thick metallic haze. They moved fast, silent through the vents, alarms echoing behind them. Once back aboard the Ember, Ray slammed the hatch shut. Tell me that chip's not corrupted. Ari slid it into a small slot. The ship's old AI core flickered to life, projecting the first face from the archive, a Luminari child smiling faintly before fading into static. Ari closed her eyes. She was my sister. Ray didn't speak. He simply set a course away from the refinery, jaw tight. As the Ember slipped into the shadow of a distant moon, Ari turned to him. What will you do with the proof? Broadcast it, Ray said. To every system that's ever traded in blood. Make them choke on their own silence. Ari nodded slowly, her glow returning, steadier now. Then you've just started a war you can't stop. Ray lit another cigarette, smoke curling around his smirk. Good. Maybe it's about time someone did. The Ember drifted in the shadow of the gas giant Kepler, 118c, half invisible, half alive with hidden power. Inside, the air was tense, too quiet, too sharp. Ray Jazan sat at the NAV console, studying the Mothspire refinery's rotating schematics. Every glowing red section on the hologram represented a patrol zone. Every dark line was a death sentence if he missed by a meter. Ari stood beside him, hands clasped behind her back, eyes reflecting the map's blue light. Her golden skin dimmed to a faint amber hue, the color of control. Their security is fractal, she said softly. Adaptive systems. They'll rewrite protocols if we trigger even one alarm. Ray cracked his knuckles. Then we'll dance between the lines. She tilted her head. And if we fall? He grinned. Then we'll fall loudly. Hours later, they floated in vacuum suits, tethered to the Ember's underside as the ship drifted close to the refinery's maintenance ring. The Mothspire hung above them, an ocean of machinery, endless pipes, and rotating antennae glowing red against the dark. The soundless void made every motion feel like a whisper before a scream. Ray activated his thrusters, guiding them toward a vent no wider than a coffin. This is the only access point under their primary shield. You sure you can fit through? Ari smirked faintly. I was grown in cages smaller than this. He winced. Right. Bad question. They entered the vent, sliding through the narrow shaft until they reached a vertical drop. Below them shimmered a vast chamber filled with pipes carrying liquid plasma. It looked like a sea of molten stars. Ray checked his scanner. Vault's deeper. We'll need to trigger an internal maintenance override to open a path. That'll alert them, Ari warned. Only if they notice who did it. He pulled out a small cube from his belt, a handmade signal scrambler wrapped in old Earth duct tape. This little thing will make their system think the alert came from Sector D, 3 decks away. Long enough to slip in. Ari's eyes narrowed. You build weapons from garbage? I build hope from garbage, he said, dropping the device down the shaft. It clattered against the metal, emitted a pulse of static, and instantly, alarms blared somewhere far away. The corridor lights near them flickered green. See, Ray whispered. Doors open. Ghost did it. They descended into the refinery's lower guts. The heat rose with every level, sweat gathering under Ray's helmet. Metal walls groaned with pressure, alive with the heartbeat of machines older than law. Finally, they reached the data chamber, a cathedral of glowing cables and floating cores. Hundreds of memory crystals hovered midair, each one humming faintly. Ari stepped closer, eyes wide. Each holds a consciousness, trapped, not dead. Ray stared at her. You mean they're alive in there? Half alive. Their lights stripped, looped, replayed to keep the cells active. He clenched his fists. Then we're ending it. They split up, Ari interfacing directly with the central node, Ray planting detonator discs on the surrounding conduits. Her voice filled the room, low and rhythmic, almost like singing. Her glow brightened, veins of light running across her arms as she connected her energy to the system. They remember us, she whispered. They want to be free. Ray paused. Then give the order. Her fingers touched the terminal, and the lights around them flared. 1,000 whispers echoed through the chamber. Voices of the imprisoned luminari, faint but real. Release, they said in unison, the sound vibrating in Ray's bones. Suddenly, the room's alarms screamed to life. Red strobes spun. The refinery AI's voice boomed through the intercom. Unauthorized access detected. Purge sequence initiated. Time to go, Ray shouted. He grabbed Ari's arm, pulling her away from the terminal. Plasma conduits exploded around them, molten light spilling like liquid sun. The air shimmered with heat, systems overloading. Ray triggered his wrist detonator. Explosions rippled through the lower levels, controlled, precise, beautiful in their destruction. They raced through collapsing corridors, sliding under falling debris, chased by the roar of fire and shattering glass. Ari stumbled once, her glow flickering. Ray caught her, slinging her arm over his shoulder. Keep moving, he barked. They burst through the last maintenance hatch just as a wave of flame swept the corridor behind them. The Ember's airlock slammed shut, and the ship lurched away from the refinery, its engines screaming as the blast wave chased them into space. Through the viewport, the moth spire burned, a dying star collapsing in on itself. Pieces of debris spiraled outward, scattering into the void like metallic rain. Ari sank to her knees, trembling, her light pulsing erratically. They're free, she whispered. All of them. Ray sat beside her, breathing hard, watching the wreckage fade. You did it. We did it, she corrected. Her gaze turned toward him, fierce and bright. But you realize what we just did, don't you? Yeah, he said with a crooked smile. We just declared war. The ship's long-range scanner pinged, multiple red signatures appearing on the edge of the radar. Sable ships, converging. Ray cracked his neck and slid into the pilot's chair. Then let's make it official. Ari smiled faintly, the glow returning to her eyes. Light the fuse, human. He pushed the throttle, and the Ember leapt into the darkness. Two fugitives now carrying the proof that could ignite a galaxy. The Ember flew on the edge of darkness, half broken, half burning, but still alive. The hull groaned with every engine pulse, and the stars beyond looked like cold knives through the cracked viewport. Ray Jazan sat hunched at the controls, sweat running down his neck, eyes scanning the radar where 3 red dots refused to vanish. Sable ships. Still chasing. Still hungry. They don't quit, he muttered. Behind him, Ari stood in the dim glow of the medbay light. Her skin shimmered faintly gold, fractured by exhaustion. The energy she had poured into freeing the Luminari had drained her to the bone. But her eyes, those fierce, molten eyes, still burned bright. They can't afford to quit, she said softly. The moment our proof reaches open comms, their empire dies. Ray looked back at her, voice low. Then we better make sure it gets there. He slid the data chip, the one holding the Mothspire's memories, into a protected slot on the console. Haven Ring's only 2 jumps away. If we can reach their relay towers, we can broadcast everything. Ari nodded but didn't move. Her gaze stayed fixed on the viewport. And if we don't? Ray smirked faintly. Then we'll die loud enough that the universe hears it anyway. Hours passed in silence, broken only by static and the steady beat of the engines. The Ember drifted near the edge of an asteroid belt, hiding between frozen rocks older than Earth itself. Ray reached for the coffee bulb, found it empty, and cursed softly. Fuel's low. Rations are gone. Remind me why every good plan ends with starving in space. Because heroes are usually poor, Ari replied. Her tone was dry, almost human now. He grinned despite himself. Who said I was a hero? You didn't have to, she said. The universe did when you turned your back on running. Before he could respond, a sensor alarm wailed, a sharp, digital scream. Ray turned. They found us. 3 Hunter-class interceptors closed in from different vectors. Their engines glowed red like open wounds. He slammed the controls. Hold on. The Ember twisted hard, scraping against a jagged asteroid, sparks exploding from the hull. One of the Sable ships overshot and collided with debris, vanishing in a silent burst of fire. 2 left, Ray hissed. Ari leaned against the wall, eyes glowing brighter now, feeding off the adrenaline. Let me help. You're barely standing. I don't need to stand to fight. She pressed her palms against the bulkhead, and suddenly the lights on the Ember flickered, pulsing with her heartbeat. The ship's systems surged. Shields strengthened. The engines howled. What are you doing? Ray shouted. Amplifying, she gasped. Borrowing your fire. The ember burst from behind the asteroid field like a comet, trails of plasma burning in its wake. Ray fired the ship's rear cannons, crude, outdated weapons, but aimed by steady human instinct. 2 perfect hits. The second interceptor shattered into molten shards. The third fired a barrage of plasma spears that sliced through the ember's tail. Warning lights flared red across the console. Main coolant lines gone. Ray yelled. Ari staggered, gripping the console. Do what you must. Ray's eyes met hers, hard, determined. Hold on to something. He cut the main reactor. The ember fell dead, drifting, powerless. Then he flipped a manual switch beneath the controls, one that most modern pilots didn't even know existed. Ignition override, manual burn. The old engines flared to life, roaring like beasts. The sudden blast of thrust slammed them forward, straight into the last interceptor's firing path. Are you insane? Ari shouted. Completely. Ray barked back. But so was everyone who ever broke chains. The ember collided with the interceptor head-on, scraping across its hull. At the perfect moment, Ray fired the emergency vent, spewing burning plasma across the Sable ship's surface. The explosion bloomed behind them like a small sun. The ember tumbled through the shockwave, stabilizers screaming, alarms blaring. When the noise finally faded, silence returned, broken only by the faint hum of the ship's dying systems. Ray coughed, blood on his lip. Report. Ari's light had dimmed again, but her smile was faint and real. They're gone. He slumped into the pilot's chair, chest rising and falling. Good. Her gaze moved to the data chip, still glowing in its slot. But we're nearly out of power. He looked at her, eyes burning with something between exhaustion and defiance. Then we coast the rest of the way. Haven Ring's close enough. Even if the engines die, momentum will carry us. Ari's lips curved into a soft smile. Humans are strange. You gamble everything on hope. Hope's cheap, Ray said, closing his eyes. But it burns hotter than fuel. Outside, the stars stretched across the void like rivers of light, guiding the crippled ship toward the last beacon of safety and the storm that waited beyond it. Neither of them spoke again for hours, but the silence wasn't empty this time. It was full of ghosts, of fire, and of a promise that hadn't yet finished burning. The ember limped toward Haven Ring, her hull scorched, her engines groaning like a wounded animal refusing to die. The station grew larger in the viewport, a ring-shaped fortress orbiting a golden planet, alive with traffic and neon light. To Ray Jazan, it looked like salvation. To Sable, it was a spark waiting to start a wildfire. Ari stood behind him, one hand on the console to steady herself. Her glow was faint but steady now, pulsing with purpose rather than exhaustion. They'll try to intercept us before docking, she said. They'll try, Ray muttered, fingers flying over the controls. Doesn't mean they'll succeed. He opened a comm channel. Haven Control, this is Freight Vessel Ember. We're carrying critical data for public release. Emergency clearance, no scans. Static. Then a gruff voice answered. Identify yourself. Ray Jazan, former firefighter, current pain in Sable's ass. Silence again. Then laughter. Docking Bay 6. You've got 5 minutes before Sable locks this channel. Ray cut the comms, smirking. Guess the universe remembers me after all. The ember touched down hard, metal screeching against metal. Mechanics rushed forward, half in shock, half in curiosity. The ship looked like it had crawled through hell. Ray carried the data chip in a sealed case. Ari followed close, hood drawn to hide her luminous skin. They made their way through narrow corridors toward the ring's central relay tower, a column of glass and steel that pulsed with the heartbeat of millions of transmissions. Haven Ring wasn't a clean place. It was a city built from the scraps of empires, miners, smugglers, exiles. But it had one rule. The truth could pass through here, even if no one liked what it said. Inside the relay hall, Ray met the overseer, a cybernetic woman with iron braids and one human eye left. You sure about this, Jazan? She asked. Sable's already got half the galaxy in their pocket. Ray placed the data chip on her desk. Then let's take the other half away. She studied the case, then nodded once. Broadcast in all bands. All bands, Ari said firmly. Her voice carried an echo now, something deep, ancient. Let every world see what they did to us. The overseer inserted the chip. The relay's lights flared from blue to white. Data streamed outward in bursts of golden light, leaping across satellites and comm arrays like wildfire through dry grass. Across hundreds of systems, screens flickered to life. Faces of the enslaved appeared. Humans, Luminari, and others. Names, dates, transactions. A billion eyes watched as the crimes of Sable spread across the stars. For a heartbeat, the galaxy held its breath. Then came the noise. Outrage. Uprisings. Protests. Contracts torn apart in live broadcasts. Governments issuing sanctions. Even some syndicate lords declared neutrality. Sable's iron grip began to crack. Ray leaned against the console, exhaling smoke. "It's done." "Not yet," Ari said. Her gaze turned toward the viewport. "They're coming." Outside, the station lights dimmed. The void filled with red glows. Dozens of Sable ships dropping out of warp, surrounding the ring like a pack of predators. Ray cursed under his breath. They tracked the signal. The Overseer grabbed a rifle from the wall. "Then we hold the line." All over Haven Ring, alarms blared. Dock workers sealed blast doors. Refugees grabbed tools, turning them into weapons. Pilots scrambled to launch defense drones. Ari stepped to the center of the hall. Her glow brightened until the air itself shimmered. "Give me access to the power grid." "What for?" Ray asked. "To make sure their first shot doesn't reach us." She placed her hands against the relay tower. Golden light flowed from her palms into the circuits, spreading like veins of sunlight through the walls. Every light in the ring pulsed once, then steadied. When the first Sable missile hit, the shields held. The second hit harder, cracks spiderwebbed across the barrier, but it held again. The third broke through, exploding against the outer rim. Ray grabbed a headset. "All defense crews, focus fire on their lead cruiser. Hit the engines, not the bridge." The ring's guns responded in unison. Fire streaked across the void. A Sable destroyer erupted into flame. Ari's glow grew unstable, flickering like lightning. "Ray, if I stop, the shields die." "Then don't stop," he said. She laughed weakly. "I wasn't planning to." Another blast rocked the station. The relay tower shuddered, sparks raining down. Ari screamed, but the light pouring from her body flared outward, forming a radiant dome over the entire structure. Through the smoke and chaos, Ray looked at her, this being of light and defiance, and realized what humanity's place in the universe really was. Not the strongest, not the smartest, but the species that refused to kneel. The comm crackled. "They're retreating," the Overseer shouted. The broadcast went viral. "Half their fleet's mutinying." Ray stumbled toward Ari, catching her as she collapsed. Her glow dimmed, but her heartbeat thrummed against his chest. "You did it," he whispered. "We did," she murmured. "But the galaxy isn't saved yet." He smiled faintly. "Good. I wasn't done fighting anyway." Outside the viewport, Haven Ring burned like a new sunrise, a beacon in the dark. And somewhere beyond the light, the rest of the galaxy was beginning to wake up. The war didn't end with the broadcast. It began with it. Days after the signal lit the galaxy, Haven Ring was reborn, not as a refuge, but as a fortress. Every corridor smelled of solder and smoke. Dock workers became soldiers. Smugglers became scouts. Even children carried tools and patched hulls. The truth had spread too far to silence now, and Sable's empire came to erase it from history. Ray Jazan stood on the command deck, staring at the tactical hollow. Red dots filled the void around the station, Sable's fleet, regrouped and enraged. His reflection in the viewport looked older than he remembered. Exhausted, unshaven, but alive in a way he hadn't been in years. Behind him, Ari entered silently. Her glow was different now, steady, golden, strong. Not the fragile shimmer of a prisoner, but the radiance of someone who had accepted what she was. Light that refused to die. "They brought everything," Ray said, nodding toward the swarm of ships. "Good," she answered. "Then we don't have to go looking for them." Ray turned to her. "You realize if we fight, we might not walk away from this one." Ari stepped closer, placing a hand over his heart. "We've walked through fire before, human. Maybe it's time we breathe it." The first volley hit before the words finished leaving her lips. Plasma waves tore across the shields, shaking Haven Ring like a living thing. The lights flickered, the floor vibrated under their boots. Ray grabbed the intercom. "All defense crews, return fire." Aim for their command ships. The small ones will break when they see their captains burn. The ring's cannons roared to life, firing streaks of molten light into the void. For a brief moment, it looked like a sunrise in space. Ari took position near the main power core, connecting her palms to the energy conduits. Her veins lit up like molten rivers. Their next barrage will collapse the outer shield, she warned. I can hold it, but not alone. Ray joined her, placing his gloved hand over hers. The circuit sparked where human skin met living light. Then we hold it together. The room exploded with radiance. The energy between them pulsed outward, merging with the power grid. The shield flared bright gold, expanding beyond the station like a heartbeat. The next wave of Sable missiles hit and bounced off, burning away in trails of flame. Across the fleet, panic spread. Sable captains shouted orders, some retreating, others charging in blind rage. Haven's people cheered, but Ray knew better. They'll try something bigger, he said through clenched teeth. Something desperate. He was right. The flagship Black Reliquary emerged from the smoke, dwarfing every other vessel. Its surface shimmered with obsidian plating and energy conduits glowing blood red. On its bridge, Lord Varen, the new Sable commander, watched them through cold cybernetic eyes. Cut the signal, Varen ordered. Burn their light to silence. The reliquary charged its main cannon, a weapon built to crack moons. Ray's console flashed warnings. That shot will vaporize half the ring. Ari's voice was calm. Then we go to them. He blinked. What? We take the Ember, she said, meeting his eyes. One ship, one shot. Straight into their cannon core. He stared at her, then at the burning sky outside. That's suicide. Her smile was soft, fierce. Only if it fails. Minutes later, the Ember launched from Haven's Bay, engines screaming one last song. The battered freighter rose into the firestorm, weaving through enemy lines, trailing sparks and glory. On the bridge, Ari sat beside Ray, her hand resting lightly over his. You should know, she said, voice almost gentle. When Luminari bind with humans, our energy links. When I light the core, you'll feel it too. He chuckled dryly. You always did make things complicated. Life is complicated. Dying can be simple. They broke through the front line, heading straight for the reliquary. Its cannon mouth glowed red hot, charging for the final strike. Ray took a breath. You ready? Ari leaned close, her glow surrounding them both. For this life, yes. He pushed the throttle to maximum. The Ember screamed forward, a meteor of fire and defiance. The reliquary fired. For a split second, light consumed everything. Then the Ember disappeared into the cannon's mouth, right as Ari released her full power. The explosion that followed wasn't a blast. It was a sunrise. The reliquary shattered from within, its core imploding into golden light. The shockwave rippled across space, cutting through Sable's fleet, disabling ships, silencing weapons. The fire spread but did not burn, it illuminated. Back on Haven Ring, silence fell. Then cheering. Then tears. The Sable fleet fled into the void, leaderless and broken. The galaxy's first free broadcast, the Light Rebellion, was no longer a signal. It was history. Weeks later, under a new dawn on Haven's rebuilt terrace, the stars reflected off the rings. Surfaced like candles in glass. A memorial stood where the Ember's hangar used to be, a bronze plaque engraved with two names. Rage is on. Human. Firefighter. Rebel. Ari of Lumen. Lightbringer. Liberator. The inscription below read, they burned so others could breathe. As the sun rose, the sky filled with ships carrying refugees, traitors, and dreamers. Some said they could still see a faint golden glow out there, two souls drifting together across the stars, forever bound by flame and light. And across the systems once ruled by fear, people began to whisper the same words that started it all. Humans don't bow, they ignite.